Right, chapter 11, a vision for you. This is the last chapter of the program of recovery. So we have completed now the history of it. We have looked at what was the problem, the doctor's opinion. Dr. Sickworth told us what was our problem. Bill W. told us in order to recover, we needed to complete the step at some stage. By doing this work during or maybe after, something would happen to us. And then we showed you in the following 3 chapters how to bring the solution to light. When we've given you all this information, then we shown you how it works. And how it works, we completed step 3, step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we completed the last chapter of the steps, which is working with others. However, this chapter ends on page 103. 103 is not the end of the program of recovery. 164 is the end of the program of recovery. So now we've been studying 2 wives, 2 employers, the family afterwards, thank you, and our final chapter, which is a vision for you. So, before we start, I'd like you to remind us what is the problem. Anybody?
We have a twofold illness.
Okay, tell me more about the twofold illness.
We have a mental obsession, which is a desire to change the way we feel because we feel restless, irritable, and discontent, and we don't want to have those feelings anymore.
Okay, that's right. So we have an obsession of the mind. We feel restless, irritable, and discontent. For me, it's the hole in the soul. But for you, you might have a word, qualificative, something that triggers that way. Resentment is one of the great offenders also. So tell me, what is the second component of the twofold illness?
We have an allergy of the body.
That's right. So tell me a bit more about the allergy of the body. How does that occur?
So when I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, I want to soothe that feeling, right? And change it. And so if I, let's say, reach for a drink, then that will trigger the allergy of the body, also known as the phenomenon of craving, and then all bets are off.
Okay, so tell me, what would be the treatment, to some extent, for, or what do we do when we talk in terms of substance addiction? Abstinence, that's right, because you see, with drugs and alcohol, which is a substance addiction, we abstain. With the behavioral addiction, although I will argue with gambling, you can also abstain, we put something else in place. Do you know what do we put in place? It's part of the appendix in the book We Are Recovered.
3 circles?
The 3 circle. And my experience is I have my program of recovery and I went to different fellowship. I went to different 12-step fellowship program to find out what they were doing. And I found out then the 3 circle, and I've tried the 3 circle, and to me this has worked very effectively for my behavioral difficulties. So remember, the phenomenon of craving is definitely part of the substance addiction, the drugs and the alcohol. When you start, you can't stop. But I will argue that it's exactly the same phenomenon occurring when you start using sugar, food, sex, and so on. Okay, tell me, what is the solution to the problem?
Working the steps.
Okay, so what happened as a result of doing the steps?
The obsession of the mind is removed.
That's right, the obsession of the mind is removed. We are recovered and we have a spiritual awakening, a psychic change, or a personality change. This is what it means to be recovered. This is what the steps are all about. So as you can see now, the steps have only one purpose: to remove the obsession of the mind. When the obsession of the mind is removed, then you don't want to practice the steps anymore, right? It doesn't make sense because they have only one purpose. However, what's happening now, we are recovered, we are sober, we're still acting out on our defect of character. We still manage to bring consequences, negative consequences in our lives. We don't want to do that anymore. How do I go from being sober or recovered to emotionally sober, emotionally recovered?
I can practice the design for living.
That's right.
Which is carrying the message to another alcoholic, practicing principles, and practicing assets.
Okay, carry and practice. Right.
Okay, chapter 11, A Vision for You. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone, they were but memories. Never could we recapture that great moment of the past. There was an instant yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure.
Can you highlight the whole paragraph, please? But not with us. In those last days of heavy drinking, the old pleasure were gone. All the way to there was always one more attempt and one more failure.
The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself.
That's right. Can you highlight the less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself? I always say my life was so small and became so teeny when I was in active addiction, and today I have a big sober life.
As we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding companionship and approval.
Can you highlight, please? Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding companionship and approval.
Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, "I don't miss it at all, feel better, work better, having a better time." As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally.
Can you highlight, please? I don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As an ex-problem drinker, we smile at such a sally.
We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with or without it.
Can you highlight, please? He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without alcohol, and that was my experience.
Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end.
Can you highlight, please? Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end.
We have shown how we got out from under. You say, "Yes, I'm willing, but I am to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum, like some righteous people I see. I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute?" Yes, there is a substitute, and it's vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Can you highlight, please? Yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. So remember, Alcoholics Anonymous was started very early on when they started to meet. So between 1934 and 1939, they were writing the book, and they came out 1934 and 1939 when it was published. Yes, indeed. So the fellowship at the time was exactly the same. They were carrying the message in the fellowship. Today things have changed dramatically, and you need to bear that in mind.
There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last.
That's right. So your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last.
The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. How is that to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? You're going to meet these new friends in your own community, near you. Alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds. High and low, rich and poor. These are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Can you highlight, please? Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds, high and low, rich and poor. These are the future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Among them, you will make lifelong friends.
That's right. Can you highlight? Among them, you will make lifelong friends. And that's my experience.
You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence shoulder to shoulder your common journey. Then you will know what it means to give of yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself.
Can you highlight? Then you will know what it means to give of yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself.
It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that.
Can you highlight, please? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. All the way to our own recovery proves that. It works.
Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world's tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions.
Can you highlight? To follow its suggestions.
Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out. In the chapter Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to help.
Okay, can you highlight, please? In the chapter Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to help. So, my question is, you are quite new to the program. You have now completed the full program of recovery. You understand the problem and the solution. You know exactly what to do. So tell me, if you were going to go to your meeting today, how would you feel and how would you approach somebody? Tell me a little bit of what you think you would do. Any ideas?
Do you want to read this book with me?
That's right. Don't approach people telling them, do you want me to be your sponsor, or do you want me to be your guide, which is what I generally do. The best thing is to approach people and say, I have found a solution to my drinking problem. Do you want to do some reading with me? And if they say yes, then tell them to get a copy of the big book, 5 highlighter and a pencil. But also tell them about the illness, the malady. Tell them how you overcome it. So explain the twofold illness, the obsession of the mind and the physical allergy. And explain to them they don't have to believe in God or spirituality, that there is a solution. And if they can identify with the problem and the solution, the twofold illness with the problem, which is the obsession of the mind and the physical allergy, they will understand you at once. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because remember, the problem is nowadays you might be judged. If you go to meeting and if you're new and you've completed the program, people might say, no, you have to wait 1 year. And that will lead you to drink again. Okay?
Suppose now that through you, several families have adopted this new way of life. You will want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future will be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. Here is a brief account. Years ago, in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. He had had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober but a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom?
Can you highlight? Still physically weak and sober, but a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? Who was that person, do you think?
Bill W.
That's right, it was Bill Wilson, Bill W.
One dismal afternoon, he paced a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. Of course, he couldn't drink, but why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was old, insidious insanity, that first drink.
Okay, can you highlight, please? After he had not been sober, had he not been sober 6 months now, perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was the all insidious insanity, that first drink. So again, this is Bill W. And Bill W right now is not having a craving. What is he having?
A desire.
A desire to do what?
To drink?
To soothe.
To soothe.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily want to drink, he wants to soothe because this business thing just fell apart. That's why he's feeling restless, irritable and discontent. He's in fear. And fear is grabbing him and say, well, why don't you have a drink to fix that hole in the soul?
With a shiver, he turned away and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. But what about his responsibilities, his family, and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well? Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman. His sanity returned, and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into the booth and lifted the receiver.
Can you highlight, please? His sanity returned and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver. So what is that exactly? What is he doing now?
Working well is kind of.
Well, he's actually starting to practice the design for living. He's putting into action some of the components of the design for living.
His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic.
Can you highlight? Painfully aware of being somewhat abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. Who are we talking about here?
Dr. Bob.
Dr. Bob, that's right.
When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary. But the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. Some time later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went out on a roaring bender. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problem squarely, that God might give him mastery.
Okay, so can you highlight this please again? So being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. Sometime later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. For him, this was the spree that ended all spree. He saw that he would have to face his problem squarely, that the solution might give him mastery.
One morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business.
Okay, so can you please highlight all of this? This is very important because here you see, so highlight, one morning he took the bull by the horn and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he met the round of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for his night meant ruin. For this might mean ruin, particularly to a person of his line of business. So here Dr. Bob tells us that the last spree was the end. That was the last spree, that was it. Okay? So here he admitted that he had a problem. Bill W. had told him about, the spiritual solution to our problem. So Bill W. had carried a message to him. So he had hope that there would be a solution to his problem, and he had faith. So he made the decision the following morning to go for it. And what did he do? He did a step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Can you see that here? That's exactly what he's done. So he's done his step 1, 2, and 3. When Bill W. brought in the information, he was able to do the 3 steps very quickly, and then in one day, he did the rest of the step 4 to 9.
At midnight he came home exhausted but very happy. He has not had a drink since.
That's right. At midnight, he came home exhausted but very happy. He had not had a drink since.
As we shall see, he now means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. But life was not easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. One day, they called up the head nurse of a local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect.
Okay, can you highlight, please? But life was not easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulty presented themselves. They both saw that they must keep spiritually active. So they need to carry the message. They need to practice the principle and the asset, right? One day they called up the head nurse of the local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect.
She replied, "Yes, we've got a corker. He's just beaten up a couple of nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking. But he's a grand chap when he's sober. Though he's been in here 8 times in the past 6 months."
Can you highlight, please? She replied, "Yes, we've got a cocker. He's just beaten up a couple of nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking, but he's a grand chap when he's sober. Though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months." Who was this person? AA number 3, Bill D.
Understand, he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight. Here was a prospect, all right, but By the description, none too promising. The use of spiritual principles in such cases was not so well understood as it is now.
Can you highlight, please? The use of spiritual principle in such cases was not well so understood as it is now.
But one of the friends said, "Put him in a private room. We'll be down." 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. "Who are you fellows, and why this private room? I was always in a ward before." Said one of the visitors, "We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism." Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, "Oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. These last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand
Can
it."
you highlight, please? Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, "Oh, that's no use. Nothing will fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it."
For an hour, the 2 friends told him about their drinking experiences. Over and over he would say, that's me, I drink like that."
Can you highlight, please? For an hour, the 2 friends told him about their drinking experiences. Over and over, he will say, that's me, I drink like that. That was my experience the first time I went to AA. I listened to stories and I was like, whoa, this is me. And all of that time I thought I was alone. I thought I was special and different.
The man in the bed was told of the acute poisoning from which he suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. There was much talk about the mental state preceding that first drink. "Yes, that's me," and the sick man, "the very image. You fellows know your stuff all right, but I don't see how or what good it will do. You fellows are somebody. I was once, but I'm a nobody now. From what you tell me, I know more than ever. I can't stop." At this, both the visitors burst into a laugh. Said the future fellow of Anonymous, "Damn little to laugh about, that I can see." The 2 friends spoke of their spiritual experience and told him about the course of action they carried out.
Stop, can you highlight? So the 2 friends spoke about their spiritual experience, their psychic change, their personality change, and told him about the course of action they carried out. So what did they carry out? What did they do?
Steps.
That's right, they did the steps. Although at the time, it wasn't the steps. What was it at the time? Do you remember?
The tenants.
The tenets of the Oxford group. We had a number 3, a number 4, a number 9, a number 12. 3, 4, 5, 9, 12. Sorry, that's right.
He interrupted, "I used to be strong for the church, but that won't fix it. I've prayed to God on hangover mornings and sworn that I'd never touch another drop. By 9 o'clock, I'd be boiled as an owl." Next day found the prospect more receptive. He had been thinking it over. "Maybe you're right," he said. "God ought to be able to do anything." Then he added, "He sure didn't do much for me when I was trying to fight this booze racket alone." On the 3rd day, the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his Creator and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary.
Very important. So can you highlight this? On the 3rd day, the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his Creator, of the solution, and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. So what does that mean? How long did it take him to do the first 3 steps?
3 days.
3 days.
3 days, that's right. On the 3rd day, he made a decision to hand over his will and his life over to the care of the solution, to God, a God of his own understanding. How long do they say in the rooms it might take to do the first 3 steps? 12 months?
Depends.
If you're lucky. After you've written so much stuff, then most people will say, thank you, but I'm done now. Goodbye. I'll have another drink. So you see, the thing is, here we are being told that Dr. Bob did a step 4 to 9 in 1 day. Here we are told that Bill Dalton, A number 3, did step 1, 2, and 3 in 3 days. Admitted, came to believe or willing to believe, and made a decision. Simple. Let's keep it simple. We're not complicated people, or slightly complicated people, but the program of action in itself is really, really easy.
His wife came, scarcely daring to be hopeful, though she thought she saw something different about her husband already. He had begun to have a spiritual
Can you
experience.
highlight? He had begun to have a spiritual experience. When you let go absolutely and you make a decision to live in a solution, not in a problem after having had meeting and having a little bit of hope, then you can start the program.
That afternoon, he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man.
Can you highlight? That afternoon he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man. Can you underline a free man? In 3 days.
He entered a political campaign, making speeches, frequenting men's gathering places of all sorts, often staying up all night. He lost the race by only a narrow margin, but he had found God, and in finding God, had found himself. That was June 1935. He never drank again.
Can you highlight, please? That was June 1935. He never drank again. And you know what? He found the solution. And in finding the solution, he found himself.
He, too, has become a respected and useful member of his community. He has helped other men recover and is a power in the church from which he was long absent. So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt they had to give to others what they had found or be sunk. After several failures to find others, a 4th turned up.
Okay, can you highlight a 4th turn up? And I don't know if you know who is the 4th person. There's a lot of controversies about this. To make it right, what I would say, the 4th person, Andy, Edandy, is considered being the 4th person because he remains sober all the time. That's the reason why. So, but you might do a little bit of digging and research and get back to me if you found any other information.
What is his name again, sorry?
Ed, E-D, Andy, A-N-D-Y.
He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. They were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him.
Can you highlight, please? He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him.
He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room recently vacated by the lawyer. He had 3 visitors. After a bit, he said, "The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all." So 1 more was added to the fellowship.
Can you highlight, please? The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I am ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all. So 1 more, was added to the fellowship.
All this time, our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. He was there 3 months. He now returned home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the lawyer, and the devil-may-care chap. These men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others.
Okay, can you highlight, please? Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by a happiness they found in giving themselves for others. And that's exactly the way that I feel when I work with you guys.
They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. They were willing by day or night to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures, but in those cases they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living, thus relieving much worry and suffering. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women, happy in their release and constantly thinking how they might be present present their discovery to some newcomer. In addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems.
Can you highlight, please, in addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems.
Outsiders became interested. One man and his wife placed their large home at the disposal of this strangely assorted crowd. This couple has since become so fascinated that they have dedicated their home to the work. Many a distracted wife has visited this house to find loving and understanding companionship among women who knew her problem, to hear from the lips of their husbands what had happened to them, to be advised how her own wayward mate might be hospitalized and approached when he next stumbled. Many a man, yet dazed from his hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Many an alcoholic who has entered there came away with an answer. He succumbed to that gay crowd inside, who laughed at their own misfortunes and understood his. Impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when, later, in an upper room of his house, he heard the story of some man whose experience closely tallied with his own. The expression on the faces of the women, that indefinable something in the eyes of the men, the stimulating and electric atmosphere of the place, conspired to let him know that here was haven at last. The very practical approach to his problems, the absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had was irresistible. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought of what they could now do for some stricken acquaintance and his family.
Okay, can you highlight all of this, please? The very practical approach to his problem, the absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought of what they could not do for some stricken acquaintance and his family.
They knew they had a host of new friends. It seemed they had known these strangers always. They had seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned the great reality, their loving and all-powerful Creator.
Can you highlight, please? They had visioned the great reality, their loving and all-powerful Creator.
Now this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80 as a rule. Alcoholics are being attracted from far and near. From surrounding towns, families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away has 15 fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Being a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds.
Okay, remember that was written in 1939. Huh? Mm-hmm.
But life among Alcoholics Anonymous is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals. Cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disheartened son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially, if he means business.
Can you highlight, please? No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially if he means business. If they want to stop, then they are welcome. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. What tradition is this?
3.
March. That's right.
Social distinctions, petty rivalries, and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under one God, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others, the things which matter so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? Under only slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many eastern cities. In one of these, there is a well-known hospital for the treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there.
Can you highlight? 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there. Who is that?
Bill?
Bill W, that's right.
Many of us have felt, for the first time, the presence and power of God within its walls. We are greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there, for he, although it might prejudice his own work, has told us of his belief in ours. Every few days, this doctor suggests our approach to one of its patients.
Can you highlight, please? We are greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there, for he, although it might prejudice his own work, has told us of his belief in ours. Every few weeks, this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Who is the doctor?
Dr. Silkworth.
Dr. Sickworth, the great doctor, that's right.
Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. Many of us, former patients, go there to help.
Can you highlight? Many of us former patients go there to help.
Then, in this eastern city, there are informal meetings such as we have described to you, where you may now see scores of members. There are the same fast friendships. There's the same helpfulness to one another as you find among our Western friends.
Can you highlight, please? They are the same fast friendships. They are the same helpfulness to one another as you find among our Western friends.
There is a good bit of travel between East and West, and we foresee a great increase in this helpful interchange. Someday, we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination.
Can you highlight, please? Someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. And that's pretty accurate nowadays in 2019. There are meetings of AA throughout the world.
To some extent, this is already true. Some of us are salesmen and go about. Little clusters of 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. Through contact with our two larger centers, those of us who travel drop in as often as we can. This practice enables us to lend a hand, at the same time avoiding certain alluring distractions of the road, about which any traveling man can inform you.
Okay, can you highlight, please? Those of us who travel drop-ins as often as we can all the way to, about which any traveling man can inform you.
Written in 1939. In 2019, there are about 120,300 groups. There is AA activity in approximately 180 countries with an estimated membership of over 2 million.
Wonderful.
Thus we grow, and so can you, though you be but one man with this book in your hand. We believe and hope it contains all you will need to begin. We know what you are thinking. You are saying to yourself, I'm jittery and alone. I couldn't do that. But you can. You forget that you have just now tapped a source of power much greater than yourself to duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished in only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor.
Can you please highlight those we grow, and so can you. All the way to what we have accomplished is only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. And can you please write on the side here, carry the message or relapse. Simple. And you know, if you're like me, you might not drink or use drugs, because for 12 years I didn't use in any way, shape or form. I was sober, but I was a dry drunk. I was the people that screaming. I was resentful. I hated everybody. I hated myself. And the only way I had found in order to soothe the hole in the soul is to use food and sex. Manipulation, anger. It was horrendous. And it wasn't alive because by the end I just wanted to die.
We know of an AA member who was living in a large community. He had lived there but a few weeks, and when he found that the place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile than any city in the country. This was only a few days ago at this writing, 1939. The authorities were much concerned. He got in touch with a prominent psychiatrist who had undertaken certain responsibilities for the mental health of the community. The doctor proved to be able and exceedingly anxious to adopt any workable method of handling the situation. So he inquired, "What did our friend have on the ball?" Our friend proceeded to tell him, and with such good effect that the doctor agreed to a test among his patients and certain other alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others from a stream of misery which flows through that institution. So our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up, but if our experience is criterion, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Can you highlight, please? More than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous.
When a few men in this city have found themselves and have discovered the joy of helping others to face life again, there will be no stopping until everyone in that town has his opportunity to recover, if he can and will. Still, you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave.
Can you highlight, please? He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave.
Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little.
Can you highlight, please? Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. But I can assure you what they know works.
God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got.
Can you highlight, please? Ask Him in the morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answer will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. Can you write on the side here? You cannot give away what you haven't got. If you don't understand the problem and the solution and the program of recovery, how can you give it away to somebody? You might give away some of your opinions. You will probably give away a lot of your own personal experiences, and you might not be able to justify why you're saying that to people. But if you don't understand this program of recovery, it's difficult to give it away.
See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God.
Stop. Can you highlight? Abandon yourself to the solution as you understand the solution. Step 1, 2, and 3. Make a decision. Be willing to believe there is a solution. And make a decision to live in a solution and not in a problem.
Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past.
That's right. Can you highlight? Admit your fault to the solution and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of the past. Clean house, 4 to 9. Step 4 to 9.
Give freely of what you find and join us.
Can you highlight? Give freely of what you find and join us. 10, 11, and 12. Step 10, 11, and 12.
We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny.
Can you highlight, please? And you will surely meet some of us as we trudge the road of happy destiny.
May God bless you and keep you until then.
Congratulations, you have completing the program of recovery. Can you write at the bottom here? It is simple but not easy. To do the steps is simple. What's not easy?
Step 4.
Practice the design for living. Step 4 is dead simple. Dead simple.